Welcome to Two Across, the podcast where two friends sitting on opposite sides of the Atlantic sit down and catch up over a crossword. I am Rob, and I am sitting in Montreal.
And I'm Theo, sitting in London. By the way, I can now properly credit the intro music as being called Emissary II from the album Aviary.
It is.
By enthusiasts. And I know that, Rob, because I listened to your album this week, following your mention of it at the end of last week's episode, and had a very pleasant surprise when Emissary II came on, and I thought, that's familiar. And it was nice to listen to the track in its entirety.
Yeah, maybe we'll give the listeners a peek of that at the end of the episode and just play it all the way through, because the actual song's a lot different from the little clip that we play at the beginning and the end of our show generally.
It is. What inspired it?
It actually came off of an EP that I released maybe 2 or 3 years ago prior to the album in full length, which actually relates to a book by a fellow named Ian McGilchrist called The Master and His Emissary. So on that EP, there were 3 songs. One was The Master, and there was Emissary I and Emissary II. Not to put too fine a point on it, it's a really good book if you're willing to sit through 1,200 pages of very intense prose. But he's, I guess you call him a philosopher, but he's a neuroscientist as well. He's a pretty interesting guy, and I think he's a Buddhist as well. But his main thesis in The Master and His Emissary was essentially that it relates to the split brain, left brain and right brain, but not really in the way we've come to understand it. Like, these tropes of right brain creative, left brain mathematical, things like that. Not so much like that, more that the way that each hemisphere understands the world and interacts with it. And I guess ultimately that he moved that forward as a metaphor to 2 ways that humans understand and interact with the world, and that the quote-unquote left brain way of approaching the world is an ascendancy. It's very analytical. It's very deracinated from experience, from embodied experience that we live in our lives. It's abstract, and ultimately it misses the point entirely. And so the metaphor of the master and his emissary is that the master knows what's going on, has a sense, but the master can't speak or chooses to remain in his domain, and sends the emissary out into the world to spread the word, to speak on his behalf. And then the emissary, being a fairly clever and potentially wicked fellow, eventually comes to feel that he or she is the master and has supplanted the master and no longer needs listen to him. And the argument is that is dangerous, not just for a human, but for the societies that we live in. So I don't want to take it a lot further, but the lyric material, or at least the spirit of those 3 songs, drew from my reading of that book, which really kind of affected me at the time I was working on those songs. So
wow.
There you go.
That's amazing. I'm really glad I asked. And thanks for the recommendation. That was Ian McGilchrist, did you say?
Ian McGilchrist, yeah.
Great. I haven't read him, but I want to now. And yeah, that's a really interesting background to the song. I mean, it certainly makes a nice change from, I just saw a nice flower and thought, hey, this would be a nice thing to write a song about. But yeah, that is really, really interesting and layered. And I hope our listeners can now appreciate there is much more to this intro and outro music than maybe initially meets the ear. But yeah, that's cool. How are you, Rob? How have you been?
Yeah, good. We've had a good run of sort of middling cold weather, and what that means in Montreal is hockey time. So
right,
we often, this time of year, everything thaws, and then it gets cold again and it freezes, but it freezes sort of unevenly, and that really is very bad for outdoor rinks, which is where we play most of our hockey. But this year it's been really stable around -5 to -15, and so I've been out playing an intense amount of hockey, what we call shinny, which is sort of pickup hockey, with people from the neighborhood and my sons. So that's been really the focus of the last week or two. Been a lot of fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, and you?
That sounds good. Yeah, we are all good. We had a very sociable weekend with friends visiting from Bristol and others joining from closer to home, and it felt a bit like old times, just lots of us gathering in a house, drinking and talking and making each other laugh and listening to music.
Nice.
Whilst there also happened to be some small people around as well,
inevitably,
who largely entertained each other. So that was really nice. And then last night I did my monthly pub quiz, and in a slight change of location because the team captain had neglected to book a table at our usual pub. So we relocated actually to a pub that is much closer to me. So I was very keen to make a good showing in front of the locals, and we did make a good showing, and we won by a single point, which was very satisfying. So,
Ooh, very nice.
yeah, that was good. That was good fun.
The locals weren't really that keen on these ringers that had come in from some other pub and
No.
ruined their pub quiz.
Yeah, lots of stern looks across the bar at these interlopers. So it's a fairly standard pub quiz, but they do these kind of random guess rounds where they ask a nearly impossible question and the closest to it will win like a free drink or something. So I'm going to give you an example from last night.
Okay.
The question was, how big is the world record haggis? This is obviously related to Burns Night having taken place. I think it was on Saturday. So yes, the question was, what is the largest ever haggis that's been made to the nearest kilogram?
Well, I would think it depends. Is a haggis defined as being within the stomach of only one sheep, or can you knit several stomachs together?
We were speculating about this in our team. We were sort of wondering, well, obviously presumably it has to be cookable, which must place some sort of limit on it. Anyway, do you want to hazard a guess?
672 kilograms.
No. In fact, you're about...
You're trying to find some way of making that sound like not bad, but no.
It's better than my guess. I think I guessed about 220 kilograms.
Okay.
One of the team members guessed something like 1,050 kilograms or something, which we were sort of laughing about as being ludicrous. But in fact, he won because the answer was 1,010 kilograms.
Wow.
Can you imagine such a thing? I mean...
Monster haggis.
Monster haggis. That must be about the size of, or the weight of, like a rugby team or something.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just mind-blowingly huge. Anyway, there you go. That was a little sample from last night's quiz.
Is that how they arranged the eating of the haggis? Like they had two rugby teams form a scrum on either side of the 1,000-kilogram haggis
Possibly.
and just tear into it?
I'm actually just looking up a photo of it now. So I've just Googled biggest haggis ever.
I can't imagine that's an attractive photo. I don't think that would be visually appealing.
It has a photo of a boy in a kilt cutting said haggis with a sword. And the haggis isn't actually as physically big as you might imagine. It looks about the
it's
size
quite dense, isn't it?
Yeah, it is very dense. It looks about the size of a small mattress or something.
Okay.
And anyway, this boy is clearly enjoying himself hacking into it with an enormous broadsword. So, yeah, there you go. Anyway, belated happy Burns Night to all
And
who
for any
celebrate.
listeners who are looking for your opportunity to get in the Guinness Book of World Records and we're thinking about planking or something, consider outdoing the world's biggest haggis.
Absolutely. Do think about that.
1,011 kilos.
Yeah, so there you go. In other exciting developments this week, my 5-year-old son has written his first book. And I have a copy of said book in front of me. So if you'll permit me, Rob, I will read you.
Of course.
I will read you my son's debut work, which I was very proud of. So here we go. It's called The Ankylosaurus, the Human, and the Dog. And it's got a nice picture of an Ankylosaurus on the front. So, all the animals were doing a battle, and they were doing it for quite a long time. But finally, the Ankylosaurus won the battle, and he got a medal. And then there's a picture of the Ankylosaurus on a podium.
Yes, he is there at the top.
The end. So that's the story. And you'll notice, despite a dog being promised in the title, it didn't actually get a mention in the story, which seems a pity. But then, having said that, we get a bit more on the blurb. So the blurb on the back is, it says, blurb. They were doing a battle, and the Ankylosaurus won the battle by bashing them all away. So he's given more details in the blurb than he actually gives in the story itself.
It keeps you reading.
It really does. I mean, I think there's a lot to be said for that. So anyway, many congratulations to him. I was very, very proud and a bit jealous, to be honest, because I'm 42 and I still am yet to publish my first novel. So well done to him.
Well done.
Yeah. Thought I'd share
A debut is nerve-wracking. He's got that behind him now.
He's done it. It's true. Once you've got the first one under your belt, there's no stopping you.
There's a freedom that comes with that.
There is a freedom, and I think it's eminently sequelizable, if that's a word. But he could definitely turn that into a series,
Certainly. I mean, okay, so the flaw, and if I were to say one, I mean, in terms of modern literature, is I feel that we're lacking a sort of psychological component. Like, I need to... Why were they having the battle?
Yeah, good question.
Yeah. Is it something inherent in the relationship between a dog and an Ankylosaurus and a human that it's inevitably fraught?
Yeah. They do say that great works of art raise more questions than they answer. So I think, never was that more true than of the Ankylosaurus, the human, and the dog. So...
No, it's true.
Watch this space coming to bookshelves very soon. It won't take up much space on the bookshelves, obviously. It's a very slim volume.
Somewhere slotted beside The Lion and the Unicorn?
Yeah.
George Orwell's famous essay?
I think so, and on a similar kind of level. Right, should we get into the crossword?
Can't see why not.
Let's go to the crossword, because crossing words is fun.
So, here we are, back at the crossword. Quick crossword, 17,076. So if you got rid of the 0, that would be the year of American independence.
Yes, it would. Well done.
There you go. Yeah. And also the year that Adam Smith wrote The Wealth of Nations.
Do you want to do the rules?
Yeah, why not? So really quickly, again, crossword 17,076. Feel free to play around or along with us at home. We will be posting the link to this crossword in the show notes. But if you want to just listen as you are on your Peloton or whatever else you may be doing at this point, that is great too, because we will do our best to tell you what letters we have and where we are and so forth. We do this sight unseen. We have not seen this crossword before, or at least that's what we're saying. We have half an hour to do this, and Theo will be setting a timer, which will start imminently. We're going to try and solve this because I think right now we're 6-9 to the bad. Is that right, Theo?
6-8. No, 6-9. You're right. We were 6-8 last time and we lost. So we're now.
Yeah.
I mean, we're really slipping down.
Yeah, we're slipping.
But
this happened last season as well. I recall a dark period, and then we really rallied. So maybe this will be
true.
It's always darkest before the dawn. So let's see what happens today.
And can I just say, by the way, I love the idea of someone listening to this on a Peloton. I can't imagine Two Across is the most kind of energizing listen if you're in the middle of a workout. But hey, whatever does it for you. And God knows we need the listener numbers. So you carry on.
We're going to ratchet up the intensity today. So, as the crossword gets more intense, feel free to pedal harder.
Right. On which note? The timer is going. So where should we start? Should we start with one across?
Sir.
It's places where speculation is widespread? Question mark.
Yeah.
5-7.
Yeah. An obvious one could be stock markets.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know that it fits. It does fit.
I like that. I was thinking like gossip booths or something like that.
Oh, you know what? I think this could work, Theo, because I'm just looking at 4 down, which would take the M from markets, and it's a suspended decoration. For instance, something that you'd suspend over a crib.
Oh, a mobile.
Yeah. Or as the Alabamans would say, a mobile.
A mobile. Yeah, very nice. Oh, hang on, Rob. We've got something exciting here. 7 down. It's our first one for a while. It's The clue is sense of fulfillment, and it's an anagram of at NATO's sci-fi.
And it is the title of a Rolling Stones song.
You've got it. Of course you have. And is it... No, I haven't got it, Rob.
Well, NATO sci-fi, think about the fact that it's got a T, an I, an O, and an N in it. And it starts in S.
Satisfaction?
I can't get no.
Yes. Satisfaction.
I think that's a lot of hot air, Theo.
Oh,
which brings us
beautiful
to
segue.
10 across,
Yeah.
which starts with B and ends in T and is 7 letters long. And this is a great word as well. It's a shipping term. I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm struggling.
So starting with B, ending in T, and it is hot air. But of course, it's hot air in the sense of a lot of baloney or whatever, although it's not baloney. It does start with B. It is ballast, I believe.
See, I was going to say ballast, but I thought that was
gotta believe in
something
yourself.
else. But yeah, I do got to believe.
You gotta channel your inner Ankylosaurus, Theo.
You're so right, and just bash them all out of the way.
Exactly.
Oh, they do have good.
I think it's ballast.
It is ballast. No, it is ballast. Yeah.
All right.
I was going to say they have good dinosaurs these days. They have a big range compared to when we were small.
Well, what do we have? We had the Brontosaurus. We had the Triceratops, of course.
Yeah, the T-Rex, obviously.
The T-Rex, and then the Diplodocus, or as I like to call it as a kid, the Diplodocus.
Diplodocus, please. Yes.
Yeah.
But that was about it, I think. Maybe the pterodactyl.
Yeah,
if
the
you wanted to
pterodactyl.
be fancy. But nowadays, I mean, there are hundreds. And
I think it was Jurassic Park that blew the top off the sort of dinosaur sextet that we grew up with. And it's like,
Yes.
no. There's velociraptors. There were actually more than 3 herbivores in the wild and several predators.
yeah. And there's Gigantosaurus, which is far more deadly in a way than T-Rex. I mean, there's also, in fact, pterodactyl isn't even a thing anymore. I think it's now pterosaur or something, and then some other, Latin variation that you're meant to use, or maybe pterodactylus you're allowed to say. But yeah, it's all moved on, Rob. It's all...
Dactyl was seen as pejorative to the non-dactile.
Yeah, possibly. Yes, I'm not quite sure.
Like, we don't want to alienate those people.
No, we don't. But what we do need to motor on here because we are waffling. We are only... I think we've only got 4 clues. So 5 down. Lovey-dovey or unrealistic is R blank L and then 5 blanks. So it's 8 letters in total. And... lovey-dovey or unrealistic? Because I would say romantic for that, but it doesn't fit with ballast.
Yeah, well, maybe ballast is wrong. Why don't we look at wearing them means a restricted view. 12 across, 8 letters long, second letter L, third last letter E, and last letter S.
Well, that's pretty straightforward, I think.
I think so.
As in what a Shire horse might wear.
Yes.
Blinkers.
Yeah, and that keeps your romantic... Oh yeah, I was going to say blinders, but I guess blinkers, yeah. Interesting.
That keeps romantic in play.
But I was thinking blinders. Would that...
No,
it is a British crossword.
Blinkers.
So
we would definitely say blinkers.
Okay.
Definitely blinkers.
Blinkers. Okay. Let's go to the left, work our way down there, and maybe work our way back up and see if we can attack romantic with a pincer movement.
Okay.
So give over, 4 down, starts in C.
Hang on. 3 down.
3 down, apologies.
Starts in C. Give over.
Yeah. Yeah, like territory, for instance. The Germans ceded territory in the Treaty of Versailles. Or
Cede.
Brest-Litovsk.
Yeah. Okay.
Cede, yeah, I think so. Prize draw, 2 down, starting in T, 7 letters long. I think this is something that features at the summer fair at the school where our children used to go together, and you're still
features
do.
at any self-respecting summer fair. It is our old friend the tombola.
That's something you would never ever hear. If I had not lived in the UK, I would not know what a tombola was.
Really? So how do they have an equivalent in North America, or are they just not a thing?
No, I don't think it's a thing. I mean, there's a raffle, but that's a bit different.
Or you could say maybe a lucky dip for a tombola. But
yeah, lucky dip sounds a bit too much like a porn movie thing.
Only to those of unclean mind.
It's a euphemism for the golden shower.
Oh, yeah. Well, now
all right, let's move on quickly.
Yeah, let's... Anywho, 6 down, blot out. E blank 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 E. Blot out.
Yeah, I thought erase could be possible.
Yes. Erase. So...
Erasure. So back to 9 across on the left side, tooled up, space, M as in Michael, space D. And that could be tooled up in a military sense, I thought, potentially.
Yeah. Like armed, you're thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
good
thought
one.
so.
Nice. No, I like
And,
that.
and they seem to be lobbing us some softballs, and this could be another one. 11 across, entrance, space, O space.
Door?
Yeah, I think that's pretty straightforward, isn't it?
Now, here's a literary one that don't think going to be able to get, because I don't think I've ever read Three Men in a Boat. Have you?
Well, 3 men in a tub.
The clue is one of 3 men in a tub made these. So
Yes, and that's tough because all I know is rub-a-dub-dub, 3 men in a tub, and I don't know the rest.
yeah, no, nor do I.
Okay.
Even though I think my dad used to recite it to me after bath time as he was toweling me down, but I was so young.
It's going to come back to you.
So, but I always just remember the rub-a-dub-dub, 3 men in a tub. One made. Oh,
Well, you're further along than me. I don't remember anything.
No, Rob.
Okay, that's all right. We got opportunities. Let's not get let's not get down on ourselves. We got.
Can I just say, I think I've got hot air.
Okay.
7 across.
Hit it.
And I think we can make it fit with romantic and erase.
Ooh.
It's bombast.
Bombast, Theo. Wow. Yay.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. That
And there I
fits.
was so excited about ballast. Know thy bombast from thy ballast, son.
And you shall be a man.
You shall be a man one day.
Right. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to get all the acrosses on this
Yes.
3 men
Yeah.
in a tub
Yeah.
clue. Because the 3 men in a tub
Yeah.
clue, I should have said, is 12 letters long. So it is a big old...
And it's space A, space D, and then a whole bunch of letters we don't get.
This could be our sticking point today, Rob.
We can pull out our hair after the crossword. Let's keep it in place for
All
now
right,
and
you're right.
and soldier on.
Okay. So
Soldier. Let's.
18 across. 18 across. Implausible story for fall. Could that be a tall tale?
Of course, it could be a tall tale.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it totally could.
Okay, that helps.
Oh, here. Oh no. Unless it's things. Oh, these. Could it be candlesticks, Theo? Because it's space A, space D, 3 spaces T, and then 4 spaces.
The candlestick maker must be.
The butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker. Were they the 3 men in the tub? The butcher.
Maybe they were.
Wow, I thought they were 2 separate rhymes, but maybe because candlesticks.
Rub-a-dub-dub, 3 men in a tub. The butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker. I mean, who the hell knows? But it certainly fits
All right.
with the letters. So I think we go with it. Well done.
Yeah. Here, pleased informally starts with C because we might be pleased informally that we got that. And it starts with C and it has 7 letters in it.
So we might feel chuffed.
We might feel chuffed. I feel chuffed. Do you feel
I feel
chuffed?
very chuffed. I feel deeply chuffed. And actually, for the first time in a long time, I feel quite optimistic about this crossword today, Rob.
More optimism, Theo.
We're halfway through, by the way,
Google.
15 minutes.
It is an anagram of greenish acne, and it's Google.
That doesn't sound nice. Greenish acne.
It doesn't. I don't want it. But what is Google, my friend? Starting with the letter S. 6 letters, and it is an anagram of greenish acne.
Search engine. I don't think that really needed an anagram, to be quite honest. But I did enjoy that they came up with greenish acne.
I think he had some fun with that.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's our setter taking a little sideswipe against the tech bros.
Oh, no, okay, no, this is good. Phew. Whoa.
Go on.
This was going to be a sort of famous person one, which I'm terrible at.
Yeah, we've got a bad record with
19 down, Linny or Ingolsvilder.
We can do that.
Which is L space U space A.
Laura.
Laura. Yeah. Okay, good.
Ingolsvilder, of course, author of the Little House in the Big Woods series, I think.
I didn't know that.
Which is fantastic. I highly recommend. Probably more one to read to your kids than to necessarily read yourself. But I think I referenced it a couple of Christmas episodes ago when I was talking about
think you did.
the scene in which the children get tiny Christmas presents and are thrilled,
Yes.
that they've got anything at all because it's a snowstorm. And I like to regale my children with that as a little reminder of their privilege.
Yeah, as we were railing against, the hordes of presents that we're expected to buy.
Yes, we were in full grumpy old man mode.
Well, once we get to that type of Christmas, we'll be blissfully happy, Theo.
We will.
Which is an 8-letter word ending in T space F space C. You would imagine a saint being this, I think. So it's, again, 8 letters long.
Is it?
Blissfully happy.
I can't pronounce it. Is it beatific?
Yeah, yeah. Where does one put the stress on that? I would think beatific, but beatific? I don't think I've ever heard it said.
No. Beatific?
Maybe.
I would say beatific, but it just doesn't sound right, does it?
It sounds odd. I think the Venerable Bede would have been that.
Yeah.
When he was sitting transcribing his texts
what
in his
nice
monastery.
life that was, by the way. The older I get, the more I envy those monks of yore who just spent their days very carefully writing things out on parchment in a
on
some
vellum.
On vellum, yes, in a remote monastery on an island. That sounds like a great way to live.
Yeah, go for long walks, listen to the birds.
A dream.
Yeah,
bit boring probably on occasion, but you had
what isn't?
What isn't exactly?
Yeah.
Right, 14 across. Nail polish. Oh dear. E blank A blank E blank. Go on.
I was worried about this, and then it just appeared. I believe it is enamel.
Lovely.
Oh, well, Theo, so far so good. I mean, we haven't yet hit a serious road bump or speed bump or, anyway, bump in the road. Promise to do something, Theo, 6 letters long, 17 down. It is space L, space D, space E. A promise to do something. Like that a scout would make, I think.
No, you're going to have to tell me, Rob.
I believe it is a pledge.
Oh, a pledge. Of course. My daughter's just joined the guides.
Ooh.
And had her first session last week. And they did last night's focus was knitting. So they spent an hour learning how to knit, which I thought was just really
fun.
Wholesome and nice.
Yeah. My daughter has taken up crocheting, and it is insane.
Yeah.
The stuff she's crocheted so far at least 4 or 5 beanies.
Wow.
3 have been complete successes. She's crocheted a number of tops.
Gosh.
A number of other kind of different things. She makes presents for her friends for their birthdays out of crochet.
Wow.
It is incredible. It's one of those things as a parent, you're just very proud, seeing your kid become artisanal.
That's a skill for life,
Yeah.
Good for her.
I don't know. It just makes me feel all warm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially this time of year when
Yes, sir.
we need all the warmth we can get.
Yeah, all of it.
Right. 15 across. Rest of the afternoon? ? 6.
Yeah. You went right at that one, didn't you?
Blank I ends in A. The rest. Oh! It's clever. So they're saying it's to take a rest in the afternoon.
Oh, wow. That is so good.
Yeah. So it's siesta.
So good, Theo.
Yeah.
Well done. Ooh, okay. So listeners, we have 4 clues left. And I don't want to get excited. Because we've had so many false dawns.
We have.
Last week's, lest we forget ersatz and the... Not entity, friends, ersatz. And what it
hoping never to hear that word again, to be honest.
I know.
But never mind.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. But this will not be an ersatz victory if we indeed can bring it home. And we have 8.5 minutes in which to do it. So
wow. Okay, well, let's just soldier through, because if we do get through this, I mean, knock on wood, if we're managing to knock this off quickly, we can actually indulge a little bit after the crossword and some banter.
Some meaty banter.
Meaty banter. Yeah, I guess it's something I'd like to come back to if we have time. Anyway, let's go. Okay. Beginning of a song, 23 across. It ends in O, and it's 5 letters long. The beginning of a song. Now, as a songwriter, I do know what this is.
I think also you could say, as any kind of writer of anything, this would apply, would it not? Is it
You're right.
intro?
I think it is, Theo. And then we've got 21 down, which is a 4-letter word. We have as the second letter I and the last letter G. And the clue is prawn or penguin.
And that would be a king.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're down to
Yep.
2, Rob.
Okay, so we can definitely reduce the amount of time it takes us to complete this crossword by getting 16 down,
Which is
which is a 7-letter word. The synonym is reduce, and it is S as the first letter, T as the third last letter, and an N as our ultimate letter. To reduce, for instance, in length, or a shirt,
oh, of course,
or sorry, a skirt,
or a nice crocheted beanie.
or a nice crocheted beanie.
It is to shorten.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, which leaves us one final clue, and it's 20 across.
Theo. Yes.
And it's Chelsea or Chucker? Question mark. 4 letters. And Chucker, I should say, is spelled Chukka, and it's blank O, blank T.
Yeah. I have no clue what this is.
I'm not sure what this is either. But I feel. Oh, I do know what it is. I think I do. I think it's boot.
Ooh.
Because you can have a Chelsea boot, definitely.
Okay.
Now, whether you could, and a chucker, I don't really know what the chucker part of that is a reference to. But a Chelsea boot is definitely a thing. It's a style of like a sort of laceless leather boot that
worn in the swinging 60s, for
indeed,
instance.
yes,
Or in an Austin Powers
exactly.
movie.
It's the Austin Powers boot.
Okay, got
The
it.
chucker bit, as I say, I'm not sure. So, and I think it's worth having a quick brainstorm of any other possible.
Or maybe it's... I think a chukka, I'm going out on a limb here, I think a chukka is one of those boots with a sort of curled, pointy toe that would have been worn in the Ottoman Empire.
Okay.
There, I'm just
I'm
throwing that out.
happy to go
And I
with
don't
that.
even know if those were worn in the Ottoman Empire or if they were only worn in professional wrestling by the Iron Sheik, but I'm going to throw that out.
And I'm going to stop the timer because we have 5 minutes left. So if we've got this with 5 minutes to spare, I think, especially considering that we were 6-9 down coming into this, we deserve to give ourselves a pat on the back. But that is all contingent on all of this
Getting it
being right, including boot. So,
Boot.
should we do a check all? Is there anything that we are not sure about?
Well, let's have a look. Whose crossword counts, by the way, today? I guess I did the intro.
Yours is the crossword of record. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Unfortunately, Theo, I've got an advertisement for Concordia University that's popped up over the check anything button. So I actually can't, unless I can flip it sideways and get access
dear.
to that. Oh, I can. So are we ready to do this?
We're ready. Let's do it.
All right. Let's check all. We are correct.
Ring the bells. Bring forth the fatted calf. We have finally done it.
That felt good. We needed that today.
Yeah.
You have a lot of close games. I'm a big hockey fan, so I'm been watching a lot of close games recently. But sometimes it's nice just to literally beat the tar out of your opponent.
Yeah.
And in this case, I think we did that. We just sort of cruised through that thing.
Like an Ankylosaurus bashing its
Just like an
opponents.
Ankylosaurus with our spiny tail.
We did. We were inspired by that pre-show reading.
I think we were. I was roused,
Yeah.
personally,
Well-
by the Ankylosaurus's bravery.
Crosswords done, that was fun. Now let's have a chat.
Actually, I'm all about the segues today.
Okay.
And this is my little segue into a sort of echo of what we were talking about last week when you'd asked about the worst human being much worse than, or the human in general being worse than the worst animal.
Oh, yeah.
It's been going around in my mind back and forth these days because obviously I think we're all kind of reacting to what's happening to the south of us. And
Yeah.
sidebar on that. I'm actually trying to disentangle myself from America because I'm kind of feeling that where they're going is something that relates to them in some ways more than it relates to the rest of the world. I just like, I don't want all of my thinking to be demented by what's happening right now to the south. But one thing that is happening kind of goes against the question that you'd asked. So I would argue that the right that is in ascendancy right now in the United States of America, those ideologues would hear that question and say, that's exactly an example of sort of liberal self-hatred. You know, we're guilty about things. And this is back to my chicken conversation from a couple of months ago before Christmas, you know, feeling guilty about not getting the organic chicken. A lot of people on that side feel that this is exactly the issue with what they call liberals or libtards or whatever term they want to throw around, is this sort of self-hating, weak, constantly guilty, constantly feeling bad about themselves sort of thing. And they're saying, no, 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 you know, stand up, puff up your chest. You're a man, like the Ankylosaurus, for instance, and you can bash things and you shouldn't be ashamed of that and so forth. It's actually very Nietzschean. You know, like Nietzsche had the idea of the Übermensch. And Nietzsche brought up the idea of slave morality, that there was master morality and slave morality. And master morality was the morality of the strong who could, because they had that ability. But slave morality is sort of like a Lilliputian thing. It's like a million small guilts that tie the strong big man to the ground, you know? And Ayn Rand would blast against that as well. You know, these weak socialists who are tying down the great industrialists from achieving their manifest destiny. That is so in right now, you know, and what's being blasted out of America. It's like, no, you know what? We have power. And forever and ever, we've kept it in a holster. But we have power, and the only way for us to become great again is to unholster our power and level it at anyone who would stand in front of us. So if you're Colombia and you're not going to take our planes of immigrants, well, 25% terror for you.
Yeah.
And if you're Mexico and there's a drug problem, well, we're going to send in our army. And if you're Canada, and apparently a Fox News host railed against Canadians because I think Doug Ford, who is the Premier of Ontario, had been on the show and said, well, we don't actually kind of want to be American. Like, you know, we're not that keen on being annexed. And this Fox News was just like, how dare you? Like, we should invade you just for that. Like, you're not even grateful, you know? Like, how dare you say that you wouldn't want to be annexed by the U.S., by the greatest country on the planet? Anyway, all to say that that's what's coming out. It's this, like, this man unleashed. So I don't know what you think about that and where we go with that.
Well,
but it feels very much like the zeitgeist, to take a clue.
It is the zeitgeist. And I read an article this week actually about Canada and America and the identities of each. And it was referencing a book that was written about a decade ago saying why America and Canada should be united. And obviously this was a very controversial book when it came out and is now in the bestseller charts again because obviously it was anticipating something that is now being talked about. Anyway, the article was talking about this this idea that part of the thing that Canada needs to get past is this sort of almost envy of the American positivity. So, and it had this line basically where it said, the problem is Canada really defines itself as being not America.
Yep.
And that is not enough. Like, just to define yourself as being not something is not a strong enough identity. And so it leaves Canada, which I think does encapsulate part of the problem that Canada has with America. Like, it's vastly superior in lots and lots of ways. Not economically, it has to be said, but it doesn't sort of wear that superiority with pride. It doesn't wear it as a badge of identity. It doesn't sort of, it just really, it wears it quite quietly in the way that perhaps the Remain side of the argument did in this country during the whole Brexit debate. This idea that your inclination is to be much more modest about your own identity or your own strengths because of, you know, to be brash, to brag, to show off, to be proud is seen, I think, frankly, as being unintellectual. It's seen as being rather uncouth. It's seen as being crass. It's seen
vulgar.
as being vulgar. It's seen as being deeply American. And of course, that's not enough. You can't just define yourself by what you're not, by looking down on the other. And you have to go back to your question. I think you have to find pride in what you stand for.
And you have to find out who you are.
And find out what that is. Yeah.
Like we're sort of like the offensive lineman of the great quarterback. We play on the field together, and then we hang out with him after school and on weekends and at parties and stuff. And he's getting all the girls, and he's beautiful, and he's assertive and so forth. And then we're there, and we're just trying to kind of imitate and sort of take a bit of his shine to a certain extent. But of course, he's setting the terms of what's cool, what's likable, what's noteworthy. And we're sort of living within those terms and trying to become a sort of version of that. But the reality is, maybe we're not suited to be even playing football. Maybe we should be in the arts.
Yeah.
Maybe we should be a physicist. Maybe we should be something else. And yet, because we're so much in the orbit of this charismatic, brash individual, we're unable to see ourselves within our own frame. And I think that's a big problem with Canada's psyche. And I think it's a big opportunity right now with where America's going, that it is so repellent to so many of us that it is making us think about, well, who are we actually? Like we keep saying, oh, we're different, we're not American, because that is the Canadian identity. The Canadian identity is we're not American. It's not an affirmative identity, it's a negative identity. So we've carved out this sort of thing, and we like to believe we're different. But again, we're in America's orbit. The problem with us is that we just try to do everything America does in miniature, and culturally as well. And we are obsessed with America. Like I have friends that I caught back up with from high school that I hadn't really been in contact with for a long time, but we had lunch maybe 2 months ago, and we've started this little kind of Telegram, I think it's Telegram, one of those chat apps, discussion group. And it is almost exclusively about America and about American politics and about stuff like that. And I keep throwing it back to Canada. I mean, we have a leadership race ongoing for the Liberals. We have a big election coming up, and we have a lot of decision points. The Canada stuff kind of gets in there. I get a few reactions, but it gets no traction. And they're right back to the United States. And I keep saying, like, we're not American. Like, why are we so completely magnetized by them? It makes me really depressed about my country. And I don't know. I mean, I just hope that this is going to wake us up.
But I think we have a similar thing here. I think we are geographically further away, so it's slightly easier for us to remain at a remove from America's influence. But I think we struggle with a similar identity crisis in that we tend to define ourselves increasingly by what differentiates us from America rather than what makes us British. Beyond the kind of picture postcard cliches, we've slightly lost sight of a kind of cause, of a core identity.
And we've let America fill that void of meaning with their culture and their meanings and their interpretations of the world we live in.
Yeah.
And yet, if many of us went to live in parts of America, we would find a deeply unfamiliar place.
Yeah.
And yet we're sort of consuming their culture as though it were our own. And that's one thing that's different between the UK and Canada, having lived in both, is that as much as I agree with you, the UK suffers from some of it as well, and is in its own search for meaning. The UK has internalized a need to constantly ask that question and search for meaning. And the culture is very vibrant. It produces a lot. It gives you a lot of fodder for the journey of a society forward. Whereas in Canada, because America's culture swamps us, our own cultural outputs, be they written, be they film, be they music, get snowed under. And it's very difficult for us to assert and to bathe in our own culture because we're literally just washed in this tidal wave of Americanism.
Yeah. Well, I've noticed they tend, the American right tends to try and monopolize optimism. So they'll sort of say, yeah, but we're positive about America's future. You're just down on everything all the time with your talk of climate change and your talk of economic depression or whatever. It's like, stop talking America down. Yeah. And actually that's obviously a complete, it's a complete lie. It's a performative thing, but it's very effective as a vote winning tool, because you're kind of saying, well, you're sort of denying reality in order to spin a narrative of positivity. But maybe the other side of the argument needs to start doing that as well.
So that brings me back to the question I wanted to ask is, what does the other side need to do, to counter that negativity bias?
I would say, and this is something I've said quite often over here, I think it needs to be unapologetically expert-driven and unapologetically intellectual and unapologetically cultural. So to go back to your nice kind of schoolyard analogy, that it's time for the geek to emerge from the shadow of the jock, to stand up at the school assembly, to say, hey, I can sing really well. I may not be able to throw a football as far as you or whatever, but I can sing.
Or I can play the pan flute.
I can play the pan flute incredibly well. And by the way, I can tell a good joke. And by the way, I have a much more coherent vision of what the world can be than you do, Mr. Jock. And here it is. And that's what the other side needs to do. But unfortunately, it's unable to do that. Or it's tried to do that, and for whatever reason, it's failed. So, I'd be interested to see if a leader emerged, and maybe they'll emerge in Canada, who knows? But if a new kind of liberal-minded leader could emerge, who could spread that kind of positivity, had that sense of showmanship as well that Trump has, and other kind of populist leaders tend to have, that sense of being an actor. I think Blair and Clinton and Obama had that sort of actor's touch as well. But it needs somebody with that performative ability coupled with intellectual rigor, because actually that combination is very powerful. But it's all too rare in politics at the moment. So,
for sure.
Anyway, sorry, I'm getting so animated, throwing my arms around at my desk.
Swung the microphone
I
against the wall.
literally just swung. That's the sort of passion we need, Rob. That's what we need to bring to the beer halls of the left.
Oh dear.
Oh God.
Don't go too far with that.
Or the wine bars, I should say.
Yes, exactly.
Anyway,
just to close the loop on that, I mean, I think the word that I would sort of tag with what you're saying is affirmative. So you flip that sort of slave and master morality thing on its head, and you say, no, it's not about being everything relative to the master and trying to bring the master down, the affirmative, strong, jockey man. It's not that at all. It's affirming a completely different set of values that you think are right for society and where we need to go as a group, an inclusive vision and so forth, but one that's not grounded in guilt. And that's my big problem, is that, well, you're inherently racist, you're inherently XYZ phobic or whatever. Like, we all have our biases and we all have work to do, but framing everything as a negative and couching it in guilt doesn't get the best out of people. What gets the best out of people is a vision, is something to build towards, is something positive. And I think if the quote unquote left, but let's say the anti-jock forces, as you put it, which I think is really nice, are to make any progress, then they have to find these positive, affirming narratives rather than being couched in these constantly negative, you're wrong, you're inherently bad, you have to atone for something narratives, because I don't think that there's enough energy in that to propel us forward. I think it ultimately is an elastic band that will always be tugging us backwards.
Agreed. Well put. And I'm sure, again, this is a theme that we'll return to again and again. But yeah, that's really interesting food for thought. Can I round us off with just a mention of the fact yesterday was Holocaust Memorial Day and the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz.
Yes.
And the coverage was extremely moving, and I had a very emotional conversation with my daughter yesterday, who's now learning about it at school, and I think her teacher's doing a brilliant job of laying it out as it was, but she's reached an age where she knows about it, and we had a really good conversation on the walk home from school yesterday, where she was just kind of trying to process the idea that this happened. But what I wanted to say was, as a recommendation for something to watch that relates to the Holocaust without necessarily being your kind of typical Holocaust-themed film, have you come across the Jesse Eisenberg film A Real Pain, which
I have not,
is currently in cinemas and has been nominated for a few Oscars? It's a really, really interesting film, and it's basically about these two cousins from New York, one played by Jesse Eisenberg, one played by Kieran Culkin, who travel to Poland to find the house of their late Jewish grandmother, and they also visit a concentration camp while they're over there. And the film is mainly really about their relationship and about the idea that the Kieran Culkin character has kind of gone off the rails, whereas the Jesse Eisenberg character has kind of started a family and is, and that sort of dynamic and how that plays out. But in the background of it all is this kind of idea of inherited Holocaust trauma and the long tail of what that meant for a lot of people. Anyway, I just wanted to put in a quick recommendation to people to go and watch that, because I think it's a really interesting film in relation to that very, very dark subject. And yes, tomorrow I'm actually going to be watching the Bob Dylan biopic.
Ah, yes.
Which stars Timothée Chalamet as Bob. And I'll report back on that next week. Have you seen that yet, Rob? Are you planning to?
I have not, no. I have to tell you something, to be honest.
Go
I
on.
have a slight allergy to biopics.
Ooh, okay. Interesting.
Something to explore another time.
Yeah.
But,
No, I can understand that. I can understand that. I slightly share it, although I'm also kind of a sucker for them at the same time. So.
Yeah.
Anyway, do you have any recommendations? Well, actually, you gave us a good recommendation at the top of a book to read, but yeah, what's been on your sort of cultural radar?
Well, you know what? My guilty pleasure of late, and you know I love sci-fi, is that when I broke my arm this summer, as some listeners will know, I was sort of laid up in hospital, and I don't actually watch a lot of television, but I was sitting there with very little to do, and so I started watching this series on Apple TV Plus called The Foundation, and I think I mentioned it in one of the summer episodes. It's based on the classic Isaac Asimov trilogy, which probably very few people will remember. I read it as a kid. Future, galaxy, empire crumbling, a fellow who studies a discipline called psychohistory named Harry Seldon, which is basically a mishmash of history and statistics that basically takes knowledge of history with the predictive power of statistics and applies it to the future to look at broad movements of humanity. And as he does this, he realizes that the entire galaxy of trillions of people is about to collapse in chaos. And I won't go further than that, but it's actually spectacularly well done.
Yeah.
I haven't seen good new sci-fi in the better part of a decade, and it's really good. So that's been my guilty pleasure of late, and I'm almost finished the second season, which is going to be on pause, I suppose, hiatus for a period until the third comes out probably later this year. But anyway, any sci-fi fans looking for a good view, I'd highly recommend it, and it's relevant to the world right now. And I wonder if it was almost prescient in the wake of the financial crisis and the first Trump election and Brexit and all these things that have sort of shaken, as you say, the post-war consensus a little bit, that the writers and the producers didn't pick this up and think, this is topical right now, because it is about collapse and about how humanity can pass through collapse and rebuild. I mean, that's the sort of main narrative of the thing. So, yeah.
Cool. Right. Well, a good range, I think, needless to say, of recommendations this week. So thanks for that, Rob, and well done to us again on finally getting through a crossword unscathed, and it's been a pleasure.
Success all around.
See you next time.
Yes, sir. You've been listening to Two Across, original podcast by Theo Bosanquet and Rob Cole, theme music by Enthusiasts, and just for fun, the full version, Emissary II, to take us out today. So thank you very much for listening, and we look forward to having you with us next week.